Now what will it be? Death or exile?
Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Film Exiles podcast. And today, we will examine Joker. It's a spoiler cast. I'm glad to be joined by my brothers in arms. We have Paul.
Hey, guys.
We have Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
And we have Fab.
Hey guys, nice to be back again.
All right, welcome one, welcome all. This is a spoiler talk. So this is your obligatory spoiler warning. We don't want any death threats. We don't want any hate mail because we're going to spoil it. We're going to ruin it. We're going to break it down so we can forever be broken. All right?
We invite hate mail. It's okay. Please send it. Just send us some mail. We don't get any mail from anybody, so.
Like, send it to Mike. Mike is lumpy. And Mike needs the attention, okay? All right. So before we get deep into it, I just want to get your general thoughts, positives and negatives. Just give me a little bit of your opinions about the film. Let's start with Fab. Fab, what do you think about Joker?
I absolutely loved it. It was a very visceral experience. Like, going in, I only watched the first trailer and I stayed away from any form of marketing they put out after that because I wanted to go in with my mind fresh, with no spoilerish scenes and I ignored a lot of the chatter that was going on online. Went in, absolutely loved it. The score was amazing. The cinematography was great. And to top it all, the acting from Joaquin Phoenix, I think it might be the best I've seen from him. Like, the closest would probably be her.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely love the movie all the way around. And I had a negative halfway through, but they really got me with the bait and switch with the relationship with Zazie Beetz' character.
All right.
That's one thing I didn't buy at all. Like, how fast it was moving, the fact that she was fine with him stalking her. I had questions.
Yeah.
What's wrong with her?
I was like, come on. There's no girl in this world who's going to be like, oh, you were stalking me? Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. I had a problem with that, but then the switch happened. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense now. So I have a very little negative to say about it.
All right. Mike, what about you?
This film blew my mind. It was amazing. I'm very cynical at times, and going to the film, I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. I was expecting it to be basically a really solid movie. Now, I was excited by the promotional material, so when I went in, I was like, okay, there's no way they can mess it up, but I was always expecting them to mess it up one way or the other. I was expecting there to be some kind of thing in there to dilute the film and its message and its artistry, and it did a really good job, delivering on all those different aspects. So my mind's thoroughly blown. It's easily top 5 comic book movies I've ever seen. It's really, really good.
Okay. Next up, we have Paul P. Now,
All right.
what about Paul being on this podcast is that Paul is the first person to have reviewed Joker on our channel. He did our Toronto International Film Festival review about a month ago. So, yeah. So having you back on to talk about it, that's really cool. So, Paul, what did you think about Joker?
All right. Well, I really enjoyed it, as I mentioned on the non-spoiler review. I think my reaction to it might be a little more subdued. Part of that is, because, as we discussed in the non-spoiler review, I had read the script in advance, so some of the surprise in the film was taken away. But I still very much enjoyed the film. I will say that going in, sort of like Mike, I had very moderate expectations. I think, between seeing the trailers and reading the script, I had a very good idea of what this was going to be, and I think it delivered. I was pleasantly relieved that it didn't let us down. I think we've all sort of got that cinematic PTSD that makes us distrust Warner Brothers after what happened with Justice League, right? So if anything, I felt relief when I saw this movie. I felt that it delivered what I thought it would. Now, my personal level of interest in this type of movie is maybe not as high as some others. Like I went in thinking I'd probably enjoy it, but not love it. I think my expectations were a little bit exceeded, but at the same time, for me, it was a powerful movie. It was a well executed movie, an incredibly well acted movie, but it's not for everyone, right? This is a descent into madness. It's it's grim. It's serious. It's what's the word I'm looking for? I guess it's unsettling. It's
nihilistic.
Nihilistic. Yeah, it's all those things, and I enjoy a lot of those aspects, but it's a slow burn, and I can certainly see if it isn't for everyone. I did enjoy it very much, but I would say, for me, I wouldn't put this in my top 5. It's something I'll probably buy on Blu-ray, but is this the kind of movie I want to watch over and over again? Yeah, probably not. But I definitely enjoyed it. I'll watch it another time at least, and I can certainly appreciate it for what it is. And I would say that it's not the kind of movie where I'm going to criticize it and say that they should have done something differently, because I think for the type of movie it is, it delivered exactly what you would want. It's exactly what it should be for what it is, if that's your thing. So overall positive, but not for me, not a top 4 or 5. But that's a matter of personal preference, not a matter of objective evaluation. Let's say.
I'm triggered.
Personally, you can hear more of my thoughts on our non-spoiler review, but I love the film, and I echo Mike's sentiment. It blew me away. I read the script much like Paul before the movie. I read the script. I'd even watched some of the leaked clips online, so I expected to go in and have a subdued reaction to it. All the surprise and all the newness had been taken away. But honestly, the film even exceeded my expectations and just completely blew me away. The way Todd Phillips just brings everything together in terms of visually, the score, editing the film, and then there's some little things he added to the script, some little revisions that I think worked perfectly. I was blown away, and the more I've thought about the movie, the more I've even come to like it. So for me, I just think it's an absolutely incredible film. For me, the only negatives that I have are highly subjective, and I feel just for the type of film it is, it has what I would call niche sensibilities in terms of it probably not being for everyone. I don't think it has high replay value because it's very unnerving, very unsettling. It's like a horror film. It's a psychological thriller, and it does that to the max. Like, after I watched the film, I don't want to say I felt bad, but I'll say I felt bad, but in a good way. Like, completely shook me. And but that's not a bad thing. But some people may not want to watch that, so that's the only thing. And then also just with the way it's structured and how there is some ambiguity to some of its conclusions, I feel like some people may misinterpret the movie. And I don't mean that in terms of the controversy, people talking about violence or whatever, but just in terms of some people may read things the wrong way, and there is room left for interpretation. And sometimes I find that frustrating with films, because some people can come to some wrong, obnoxious conclusions, and they just latch onto that. So, but those are highly subjective. Anyway, going forward, let's a bit more specific. Let's talk about favorite scenes. All right. So, Mike, start us off. What is your favorite scene in the film, and if you'd like to, quickly kind of give us some insight that we don't know.
So my favorite scene is going to be the bathroom scene after he kills the 3 Wall Street men in the subway by self-defense. They were attacking him. He retaliated in kind. He had a gun on him that his boss gave him, and he used it.
Mike, was it really self-defense? Because I think he did chase one of them down and murder him when he was trying to get away. I don't know if you're going to call it self-defense by that point.
Yeah, I mean, I drive my car in the corner of your lawn, and you can shoot me if you have really good aim. But I think that's really up for debate or whatever. I mean, as far as the legality of it at all, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, he definitely enjoyed defending himself.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. All right, go ahead.
But I like that scene a lot because the music was just swollen. It was it was hitting the right notes. Joaquin just doing that like weird interpretive dance that I don't know what I missed, but I don't know why he did that, why he does that dance. Like sometimes he's doing like this crazy swing dancing, and then now he's doing like this straight up interpretive, America Got Talent sort of dancing. And so I don't know what, but with that music, it was just so unsettling, so unnerving. And, he was freaking out. But when he started dancing, it was just like, much better. And I think he actually was actually at peace. I mean, it took so little time for him to go from chasing this guy down that, was attacking him with a gun to just dance, Swan Laking it off. So I found it to be pretty interesting. But yeah, that was the best scene by far, in my opinion. Color grading was great. The atmosphere, the symbolism with the mirror, and all of it. It was just great.
I agree with you. That's one of the standout things. Paul, what was your favorite scene?
Okay, so you know what? One of the things I thought was interesting about this film was, when you asked that question, what was your favorite scene? I was kind of drawing a blank. This isn't a movie like a BVS where you can point to the warehouse scene or the fight between Batman versus Superman. It's not a scene or not a movie that's put together with, at least in my mind, extremely memorable scenes. I think it's unique in that I'm not sure if Joaquin Phoenix ever leaves the screen. It's one sort of continuous look at his character, and so I didn't feel it segmented into scenes. And I think maybe that's one of the things I liked about it. It is moody, it's immersive. As Mike mentioned, the color grading and the score really plays into that. I wasn't a huge fan of the licensed music, but I absolutely loved the score that helped create that mood in the film. So I have trouble pointing to one scene. I mean, visually, the cinematography in the bathroom scene I liked, but like Mike, I sort of thought, where is this coming from? Why is he suddenly into interpretive dance? So I had a concern about that. I liked I liked the scene where he met up with his former colleagues at his apartment, shot the one guy. And you really, I couldn't remember at that point from the script whether he killed the other guy or not, because so it was one of the moments in the film where I really was wondering what was going to happen, and he just kind of let him off the hook, which again, in the moment was kind of funny. It provided, and when I say funny, not necessarily laugh out loud funny, but more of like a nervous relief funny, because he actually.
Incel alert.
Yeah. But I enjoyed that scene because one, it provided some uncertainty, and you just really weren't sure what he was going to do to that guy. But overall, it was one kind of continuous look at the character, which I appreciated, and I didn't feel like the movie was segmented into scenes, which I think is a positive. I had a couple scenes which I didn't love, and since I sense I'm going to be the only one that has anything negative to say or anything significantly negative to say about the film, I thought the end, and I've seen a lot of people praise the third act. I thought the end where he's interviewed by Murray on the game show was a little too on the nose. I didn't love the how about another joke, Murray? What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a system that abandons him and treats him like trash joke? I thought it was kind of hitting you over the head with what you should have figured out in the first hour and 45 minutes of the movie. And it didn't kill the movie for me, but I didn't love it the way a lot of other people did. I thought it was kind of beating you with what you already know. And
I agree with that.
yeah, so I thought it felt expositional. It felt like for people that just can't pay attention, they're too busy on their phones, can't follow a movie. We're going to spell it out one last time just so you know where we're going with this. But overall, as I say, I love the movie. I'm going to sound like the negative guy in this podcast, but I'm not at all. I think it was a great movie. Minor complaint. Also, without getting into details and taking up all the time, there were some changes between the script, and I know, Lou, you said that you liked the changes. I didn't like the changes. There's 2 or 3 things in the script I like better. If we have time, we can get into that. But overall, still very positive. But that's sort of my contribution on the scenes.
Okay. I mean, that's a pretty unique and interesting, take in terms of seeing the film being super cohesive and loving it as a whole. That's such an interesting viewpoint. Fab, what's your favorite scene, and would you like to break it down for us?
See, this is where Paul and I are on the completely different end of the spectrum. Because my favorite scene is the interview with Murray.
Ah, nice.
And, right. See, and what he said about the little monologue about what you do when you cross a mentally ill loner, I think that was directed to the audience. The audience meaning the people of Gotham and everybody else. That wasn't for us, because we already knew what led him to that point, or what he was already. So I kind of took that monologue a different way. And I think his interaction with Murray, the little back and forth, talking about how if I was the one that was laying down dead, you'll walk over me without giving a care in the world. And I how can I explain this?
Not to cut you off, I felt there were a couple of really powerful, hard-hitting lines in there. A lot of stuff that he said, obviously, you don't need it spelled out for you. You could read the subtext, definitely. But just him verbalizing it, and obviously Joaquin is such a phenomenal actor. He can't deliver lines and they will ever come off clunky or superfluous. I felt like a couple of those lines were really powerful. I also felt like the way he delivered the quote-unquote punchline of the movie was like a stand-up comedian performing. It might not have been funny to us, it might not have been effective to us, but it had been established throughout the film that he's not a traditionally good stand-up comedian. No, he would laugh at things that other people weren't laughing at, and he wouldn't laugh when other people were laughing. So this morbid, offbeat, off-kilter punchline was very in line with this character.
And the thing with that scene is I was a little on the edge because I wasn't sure if he was going to kill Murray or not.
Or himself.
Yeah, because at a certain point, you kind of felt like Murray was trying to find a middle ground with him. Then as the conversation moved forward, he kept moving further and further away from Arthur. And then when he delivered the whole punchline, then I knew he was going to die.
And to add to that, I thought that the line he gave about, he was talking about how humor is a lot like morality or values, and how the general consensus who finds things funny or not funny, who tells you to laugh with canned laughter, etc., also are the same kind of principle tell you who's right and wrong, what's right and wrong. So I thought that was very interesting how he kind of related that, because he basically laughs at things that, like you said, wouldn't traditionally be funny. And if you compare him to other versions of Joker, a lot of times he'll have a morbid sense of humor, but it will actually be funny.
Funny. Yeah.
Yeah, like every other version of Joker I've always heard, they've always had this very uncomfortable but funny humor about them, but it was always actually funny. Where in this situation, this Joker is actually not funny, but yet they still made his acting and the performance entertaining. It wasn't the joke that was the point of. It was the fact that it wasn't funny that made it entertaining in some strange way. That's just a tribute to how well it was written, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Did you guys? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, did you guys find that he was suddenly having a little too much clarity, like a little too much self-awareness in that scene? Like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but he had run out of medication, or was he was having an issue with funding his medication? Had he not by that point, or was that his mother's medication?
Yeah,
Mike,
you're right.
do you want me to take this one, or you want me to go?
I can. I feel like the film is a journey towards self-actualization in a perverted, heretic way. You know, becoming a villain, embracing his inner psychopath, and part of that is when you see him, as you said, gaining clarity, gaining more confidence, being more sure of who he is.
Yes.
That conversation that Murray was having with him, he was going to kill himself at first, as he began to drink up in both the public, you know, the spotlight, so to speak, and also as Murray began to really show who Murray was in terms of, according to Joker from his perspective, not being a good person. His mind kind of changed, and that also points towards the unpredictability of who Joker is as a character. It's quite interesting because I read the script before I watched it, so I knew exactly what was going to happen. But I wondered, if I hadn't read the script, would I have interpreted it differently? Would I have been a little bit unsure of what he was going to do? And from what I hear from Fab was unsure of what he was going to do. So it's interesting to know what was going to happen before it happened, and to not know, and how you experience that scene differently.
Yeah, to that point,
Sorry,
I'll keep it quick. I was just going to say, to that point, you know, I really did enjoy the script quite a bit, and maybe that did take away some of the element of surprise. Well, it certainly took away element of surprise, but maybe it took away some of the positivity I would feel about the film. And again, overall, I want to say I am positive about the film, but I think maybe knowing that in advance, I question watching the film, would I have come away from that film feeling the same way about certain scenes had I not previously read the script? And I'm not sure the answer to that. It's hard you can't really go back and undo reading the script and watch the film, but I have some questions about certain scenes, whether I would have interpreted them the same way to that point. Go ahead, Fab, you're going to jump.
Okay, I was going to say, Paul, to answer your question about the medication and stuff, like Lupe touched a little on it. Like, I think the medication was stopping him from being who he actually was.
Mm-hmm.
Mike and I talked about this a little in the group chat. Like, the Joker wasn't descending into madness. He was mad from the very beginning. And he was just trying to fit into a society that wasn't going to accept who he really was. So he was doing everything possible to try and fit in to normalcy and regular life with his mom and all that stuff. So when he stopped taking his medication, all the blurry stuff in his mind started getting clearer, and that's where the self-confidence came from and everything else. That's the way I looked at it.
Yeah, and I like that better, because I think that the idea that you can be driven mad is kind of, like, in the traditional sense, it's kind of silly. It's funny because I have a friend who I talk about movies with all the time, and he brought it up to me, like, you can't really be driven mad. And while I know that, I never stopped to think about how much sense it makes in a film context. But you really can't be driven mad. It doesn't work that way. Your inhibitions toward rash behavior can be lowered because you're fed up, but you're not driven mad. You don't get a mental illness because people treat you bad. So he was mentally ill from the beginning, or he was different, or from a societal standpoint, or however you want to put it. But you don't go from, he was banging his head on the glass from the beginning. And I think that is a much better narrative, because it makes it less about society pushing him to this point, which I also really don't agree with that either. I've been seeing a lot of people on the TL, we need to, just be good to each other out there, because you don't know what kind of day people are having and all that kind of stuff. That's the same kind of pansy, like, trigger warning garbage that I hear all the time. And
right. Hey, Mike.
What?
We'll get into that. We'll get into
no,
that
we
later.
Won't. No, we won't.
We will. Yes, we will. So, my favorite scene in the film is the scene where he walks down the steps and he's dancing. And it's in contrast to earlier scenes where he's walking up the stairs. So it's very moody. His shoulders are slumped, and it's like he's swimming upstream, swimming against the current, going against the flow and having difficulty and struggling with life. He's walking up those stairs, really depressed. The skies are gray, and he's clutching his bag of pills, the pills that we've talked about that are inhibiting his true self from coming out. Then when he walks down the stairs, going with the flow, he's dancing. It's bright. The colors are more vibrant. He's wearing his costume, which is a brighter costume. And in that scene as well, they put in the rock music, and he's dancing, and it looks goofy, and like, all right, this guy's batshit crazy, no pun intended. But then it switches to Hildur Goodnitter's score, and he becomes graceful, and he's moving in slow motion, and it just looks epic and heroic. And you're seeing this juxtaposition between how the world sees him as this crazy, goofy, weird person, and in his mind, he's this cool, badass motherfucker moving in slow motion with so much grace and poise in the world. I think that scene, it gave me chills. Thinking about it really nails home how incredible this film is, and sort of the tricks and the themes and the messaging that Todd Phillips was doing. Like, Todd Phillips was really in his bag with this film. Like,
yes, he was.
Completely blew me away. So that's my
I have
favorite.
to give that to you. That's the truth.
That's my favorite scene. And when you guys watch it again, I want you to, like, really pay attention to that. To
definitely will, man.
Yeah, to the juxtaposition between those elements. Okay. So we know this has been a very controversial film. And Mike, this is when you'll get a chance to
talk about pansy trigger warning culture.
Yeah. It's been all this talk about violence, insults, and it gave me such a headache. And the saddest thing about it is that people talked about everything surrounding the film, but weren't talking about what the film was talking about. So I would like each of us to focus on one important message in your mind that Todd Phillips is trying to say in the film. And you can also talk about, if you want to, if we have time, what the film is not saying, or some misconceptions that some people have about the film. So Paul, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm probably going to look at this at a little more superficial level than you guys do, but I think that line that we talked about, what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a system that abandons him and treats him like trash? I mean, I think that's kind of the point of the film, right? It's set against the backdrop of civil unrest, but I think that's the main message, right? Is to say what happens when you let people slip through the cracks. That was sort of what I took away as the main message. Comparing that to the media narrative and all the traction we got with the incel fear mongering. I didn't catch a very incel vibe from this film. Certainly, he's socially ostracized. He's a misfit who's, like we've talked about, got a number of problems on his own before circumstance piles on and maybe pushes him to a breaking point. But as I say, I didn't catch a strong incel vibe, and I think maybe there was more of an incel vibe in the script, specifically the story with Zazie Beetz, that character, which was changed significantly. I mean, from what I recall from the script, he had more of a real relationship with her, where there was a friendship. She would ask how his mother was doing. She came to see his comedy show. He went to visit her at work. He went to clumsily sort of spy on her at work and fumbled around trying to open a bank account before getting kicked out of the bank. Then she got fired for turning down the advances from her boss. And, I actually liked that storyline quite a bit. And I think in his mind, because they had this valid friendship, he saw that going someplace further until he eventually walked into her apartment uninvited one day and saw her having sex with her real boyfriend, right? Which I think is maybe where some of the incel fear-mongering might have come from. If if some of these... it seems like some of the check marks started this narrative back when the script leaked, and maybe that's where they were basing it from. But I think it seems like, whether intentionally to address those concerns or just coincidentally, they altered the film, to scale that back. So I didn't really get an incel vibe from the film, and that's all you heard. If we heard the tagline "Citizen Kane for incels," obviously the hyping up of the army issuing a warning to its off-service employees to be on alert with standard procedure, getting spun into military on guard for incel violence. It got so out of control, right? And as far as I know, there was nothing credible, right? I mean, I'm not even sure what the dark web is, but I certainly didn't see anything even bordering on inspiring to incels. There's nothing aspirational or inspirational about the character in terms of wanting to be like the character or acting like them. So it just spun out of control.
All right. Next, Mike, could you briefly tell us what you think the most important message in the film is?
Yeah. So basically, I'm going to tell you guys what I don't think the movie is about. I don't think the movie is about treat people better because it's just we're one bad day away, because I heard that in reference to a Joker comic book one time, and I'm just juxtaposing that onto this movie because it's it's a Joker movie. No, that's not what I believe it's about. Now, I think that there are themes in here about mental illness and government funding for those sort of institutions to help those sort of people and pulling that away. There's some classism stuff in here. That's definitely a thing. But I feel like a lot of people are taking this sort of thing, they're taking this as a way of saying that people who act out are pushed to this and they don't bear any responsibility. Joker himself is telling the audience that I've always been this way, but I'm just now embracing it. And he didn't have a lot of support, and I definitely sympathize with the character. I don't condone his actions. I just sympathize with him because I'm a human being, and I can sympathize with people who are suffering from one thing or the other. So I did a good job with that. But to say that Joker is a product of society, or even this, people actually say that Gotham is a mirror on our world, also I think is bullcrap too, because people are literally they're just smashing signs over his head and beating him up for no reason. Like, that happened twice. Everyone is predatory. Every single person is predatory. Now, I think that this works great because this is a character piece. So the whole point of this movie is to put him into the boiling water. You're not putting him into the real world. You're putting him into perfect circumstances to get this character from point A to point B, and it works great. It's cinematically amazing in that aspect. But I don't think that you can honestly look at this movie and be like, oh yeah, Gotham is a mirror of our real world. Like, no, that's not the truth. If that's what you're living in, then you're living in a fantasy world. So that's my idea.
I have to strongly disagree with that. I think that the movie makes it quite clear that one of its themes is about the way we treat people. I don't think in the same vein, I don't think the movie is saying that is taking any of the blame off of Arthur Fleck's character at all. He does things that are reprehensible. He ends up paying for these things. None of these things is glorified, but the movie does clearly state several times, as a matter of fact, not just once, not just twice, that the way that people treat other people contributes to some of the crazy stuff that we see happening out there. It's just a fact of life. As you said, people are predatory everywhere in the real world and in the film. It's no small thing that the movie is made to replicate New York. It is a hyper reality of New York, especially New York in the 70s and 80s, with like garbage around and a lot of crime and civil unrest
and super rats,
that sort of thing. Super rats, exactly. But these are all things that we see happening in this day and age. Like people, like I have a friend who her cousin, either her cousin or her brother, is in a wheelchair, and he has gotten mugged and robbed several times. Like, this is not a fantasy that Todd Phillips came with. Like, I strongly disagree with you in terms of that not being one of the messages. It's not the only message, but I think it's a very important message also, because when a lot of tragedy happens and we're living in a very, very difficult and tragic time, when it happens, people don't want to look at what led to the person becoming that way. We always just like to think that villains and crazy people emerge out of nowhere and the society has nothing to do with it, and that's just not true. I feel like that's something that we as a society need to start to question and need to start to investigate, because killers and crazy people and psychopaths, they don't just come out of the ether. Sometimes they're a product of their environment. Something might have happened to them and maybe they took the wrong path and they did the wrong thing. But I definitely feel strongly about that, and I'll dovetail that into what I think one of the most important messages in the film is. I think that the film shows a society that's in civil unrest. So we have a society where the 99% are dissatisfied and are not happy with the way that things are. And then someone like Joker comes along, and the film shows that he's a narcissist, he's a self-serving person. He verbalizes the fact that he doesn't care about the movement. He doesn't believe in anything that the movement stands for. But because people are craving change and people just want to let out all the anger and dissent that's in them, they put him up as their emblem, as their icon for their movement. So it's a cautionary tale for people to be very careful about, for people to be very careful about who they choose to follow, just because they feel aggrieved, and also for our leaders and the 1% or whatever to be very careful about the state of society, because if a crazy person comes along, then people who are aggrieved and dissatisfied can latch on to that person and use an evil person as their agent of change. So that's what I have to say. Fab, what do you think an important message of the film is?
I think you guys touched on almost all of it, but
Sorry.
yeah, to come back to the point you and Mike were arguing about, a little in the middle on that one. I do think it's talking about how society might cause someone to go crazy, quote unquote. Because I believe villains are made; they're not born. Because if you're born in a different family, your situations could end up differently. If you're born in the wrong city, in the wrong country, even like it is very situational how one's life may turn out. It's not this person is born evil and they'll go on and do evil things for the rest of their life. Like I don't believe that at all. But on the flip side, I believe Gotham is a different animal. Like even in the comics, it's a city that is basically soulless. That's how I look at it, anyways. It is very hard to find a bright light in that city. Like everyone, it's always on the negative side. Like when you look at Gotham and you look at let's take DC cities for example. You look at Star City, Metropolis. There's a distinct difference between all those cities. Gotham is always grim and dark. It seems like there's never any sunlight. And that's kind of a representation of how the people in that city are. So I kind of feel like it isn't really a representation for the real world. Because I know like you try to compare it to New York City in the 80s and the 70s. Like I could see where you're coming from, but I just think Gotham is it's a different animal altogether.
Okay.
That's how I look at it, anyways.
Nice. So we've been having a very fruitful discussion, and that points to how incredible this film is, how layered it is, the quality of this film. So I'm sure that each of us thinks that in some way or some shape, some form, it's possible that this film could win awards. As a matter of fact, it has already started winning awards. It won the Leon d'Oro at the
Venice
Film Festival, and that's a very prestigious, very exclusive award. So I would like to ask you guys: do you think that it's going to win, any more awards, especially the big ones like the Oscars? And what categories do you think it should win in? Fab, would you like to start us off?
I don't know. From what I saw, Joaquin Phoenix is a lock-in for Best Actor
I agree.
as a nominee, anyways. Because I don't know. Like you have Leo out there, you have Kristen Bell coming up, you have Brad Pitt with Ad Astra. Like, but as far as nominations go, I think Phoenix is a lock. And I think what's the name of the guy who did the score? I can't pronounce his last name. Hildur Gornadotir. Can someone help me on that one?
I would have to look it up.
Yeah,
Mike.
It's a very complicated last name, but I think he's a lock for best score and the cinematography. I think that was a standout too. I think it's Lawrence Sher. He also, I think he did the cinematography for Godzilla for Godzilla too.
Mhm.
I think he'll get in the nomination for either one of those. But Todd Phillips is might get for best director, but I'm not really sure about that one.
Disagree or do you agree?
Realistically, like being like super realistic. I mean, aside from my sensibilities and my sense of and whatever when it comes to this movie receiving a nomination and whatnot, I think that it probably will receive a nomination for Best Actor, but I think that any award recognition it gets will be a huge controversy. I think that I don't think this movie will win. I think this movie will not win, despite what else comes out that could be better or not, simply on the fact of the narrative that has been created around this film. And I don't believe that the Oscars are completely impartial when it comes to that. I can pretty much say that I know that they aren't. So to be completely sincere, as Lupe would put it, no, I don't think that it will win anything, but I think that it may still be nominated for Best Actor, perhaps even Best Score.
Hey, Paul, what do you think?
I'll keep it quick. Excuse me. I'm not a huge awards guy, but I would be shocked if Joaquin Phoenix didn't both get nominated and win for Best Actor. I mean, I don't know, what his competition is necessarily, but it's certainly the best performance I've seen this year, and I can't think of anything that would compare or even be on that level. I think for director, Best Picture, I think nominations are certain. Whether or not they'd win it or not is maybe a little more questionable. I think there probably is a legitimate concern around the perceived politics of the film. I don't think it's a legitimate concern, but I think there's a perception problem. But I think the film would certainly be deserving. It wouldn't surprise me or shock me if it won either Best Picture or Director. Cinematography and score, I think, are certainly worthy of nomination, but I have to see what they're up against in terms of whether or not they'd be deserving of a win or not.
Yeah.
All right. I echo all your sentiments. I think some categories we haven't mentioned are costume and makeup and also production design. I really think this film is going to be nominated for a slew of awards. Like, everyone is like really loving the film. And in terms of the controversy / perception, the Academy is hit or miss when it comes to that, because last year I really thought that Green Book wasn't going to win any awards.
No one thought it would.
Yeah,
people hate the movie because it won.
It had controversy going into it. There were disputes with the family. It wasn't well received by people who wanted it to be stronger in its anti-racist stance. So that was a film that had some controversy / perception problems, and the film still ended up taking going hard at the awards. So I echo your sentiments in terms of, I think that Joaquin is going to win. It's like, I've seen Ad Astra, and I think Brad Pitt should also be nominated, but who's going to do what he did? Like, this dude acted his ass off. Literally, 50 pounds of his ass was gone.
At this point, I think Leo and Christian Bale are the only ones left that could challenge him or whatever.
But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. We're going to revisit this conversation as award season, matures.
Let me just add this last little point. And I think, talking about controversy and everything, I think the Academy needs this movie more than ever, because the ratings have been dropping the last few years. Mm-hmm. And this movie is definitely going to bring eyes on the award show, because for one, it's a comic book property, and that brings a lot of fans with it. And when you add on all the controversy surrounding it, everyone's going to be keeping an eye out to see if it's going to be celebrated or shunned.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the interesting things about the film is the ending. There has been, a bit of discussion about the ambiguity of it and how it means something different to everyone. So, Paul, would you like to start us off and tell us, how you took the ending and how you interpret it?
Sure. I think, now, I guess, when you talk about the ending, where do you consider the ending? Do you consider the ending when he's speaking to Murray? Do you consider it once he's been arrested and he's in the police car?
Yeah.
Do you consider?
I think that's like probably like the start of the end.
Sorry, the conversation with Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it depends. Yeah. Whatever you want, however you interpret it, up to you.
Well, put it this way. So I think you guys will get into some points that I hadn't considered. But for me personally, my major question coming out of that film, really starts when he's in Arkham at the end. I mean, one, you don't really see how he gets into Arkham. He's freed from the car crash. He's sort of celebrated by the people that have taken to his cause, and then next thing you know, he's in Arkham. Now, again, my view on this might be slightly tainted by having read the script beforehand, but you start to question how much of what we just watched in the entirety of the movie is real. And I'm gonna quote something from the script here. If you guys will humor me for about 45 seconds, it's setting the stage for the scene with the psychiatrist in Arkham, and it says he's sitting across from an overworked hospital worker in their 50s, African American woman. Somehow it's the exact same room Joker imagined his mother was in some 30 years ago. The room and the doctor also look vaguely similar to the social worker in her office in the opening scene. So that sort of callback to the opening scene where he's meeting with the social worker in her office, and now he's with the psychiatrist in Arkham Asylum, and the psychiatrist kind of looks like the same person. I had that seed planted in my head, and when I looked at that, you start to wonder, okay, if this is potentially the same setting, has he been in the same place the whole time? Has the whole thing been his imagination? How much is real? And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, I'm not thinking the whole movie's imagined. I think Phillips probably intentionally left it vague, wanted to plant a seed of question without answering it for you, which I kind of like. When I was at the screening at TIFF, he was actually asked that question directly. And he'd mentioned that he'd screened the film for a director friend of his who had asked that question. And he said that wasn't his intention necessarily, but it was certainly an interesting take. And he kind of left it at that, not necessarily invalid or valid, but open to interpretation. So I kind of like that. I think that's what he was going for. And I don't think there is a clear answer, but certainly that's where my head went is, when you combine that with some of the stuff he imagined earlier in the film, you wonder how much of this is real and how much was imagined. That's where I'll leave it. What do you guys think?
For me, just to give even more credence to your interpretation of it possibly being imagined, or at least us having to question how much of this is imagined, is the fact that after he shoots Murray Franklin, gets arrested, and he's riding through the city, and he's smiling at all the mayhem that he has caused, and the fact that people now see him, he's making an impact. Meanwhile, he felt invisible through the whole story. He gets miraculously rescued, and then he's lifted up like some kind of messiah. He paints the bloody smile, stretched out his arms in this sort of perverted Christ Superman figure, and the crowd is like chanting and hailing him, and that just came off to me as one, very improbable and highly narcissistic. And one of the things that is the high point of sociopaths is narcissism, and that's something that reverberates through his action in the film. It's always all about him to a perverted, maniacal extent. So I just thought that was another layer of the film that came about in the end, and that I thought was like super, super, super interesting. Mike, how do you interpret the ending, or what did the ending do to color the entire story for you?
I think that a lot of that was put in there intentionally. However, as far as canonically what happens in the film, I won't tell anyone that anything didn't happen in regards to it being being a hallucination or something like that, unless the film specifically tells me so. Now, the only moment in the film where that happens is Zazie Beetz' character, Sophie. She is indeed one of Arthur's neighbors who did meet him in the escalator at one point, or the elevator at one point in time, but they did not pursue a relationship. There was everything that happened after that was mostly completely fantasized. So because they went back and they specifically showed all the moments in the film that wasn't there. So based upon that, everything can be subjective. I mean, as we know, film is largely subjective anyway, but now we're talking about character study in which the character is the lens, and now they are an unreliable narrator of their own film in certain ways. So you could really go anywhere with that, and I think it's great for conversation. But as far as what makes sense in the course of the plot, well, it depends. If you want to talk about how society looks for a savior or some sort of political icon out of whatever they can find, because during times of civil unrest, et cetera, well, the idea that Joker is being revered could be a narcissistic thing, but it also fits with that ideology too. You take that away, I mean, how much of the whole scenario where people were going around in Joker masks and all that, how much of that wasn't narcissistic? There was a point in the end of the film where he said that, what was the guy's name? The show host called him Joker.
Murray Franklin.
Yeah, Murray. But he didn't actually call him that. So the things that he sees on TV could indeed also be subjective. So why not this whole clown narrative? Why not that? So the thing is, I don't think that it's very practical, or it's not very productive to consider so much things to be subjective unless you just want to have fun with it. I think as far as the narrative goes, I think pretty much everything happened except for Sophie. But the ending is definitely great, because I think that if we're considering Joker to be, if this is an origin and Joker becomes something, which we can only assume is some sort of villain, some sort of ego of some kind, then him being revered by a nihilistic society who shares a lot of his beliefs, or some of it, or at least the idea of it, makes a lot of sense to end the film that way. So I enjoyed it from that standpoint.
All right. Okay. Fab, what do you think?
Is it okay if I go away from the ending? Because there's one point of the movie where I still have a question. Like, I'm not sure about what happened there exactly. It's the part where he leaves Zazie Beetz' character's apartment. Because does he kill her, or does he just leave?
No, it doesn't show. I don't think he kills her. He just leaves.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
No, to me, I think it did.
Well, the thing is, they don't let you know, and they don't let you, because I was thinking that too. I'm like, oh, she's definitely dead, but they don't go into it. So
no, because for me, like, the ending, I think was pretty straightforward, because I don't have much to say about it. Like, you guys mentioned the part about the society embracing a figure in a time of civil unrest. I think that was pretty explanatory. But that part for me, that's the part I left the theater thinking about. Because you can take an example. It's the scene where he leaves the psychiatrist's office. He has blood footprints, which definitely lets you know that he killed her. But on the other hand,
but he has no blood on the rest of his body, which was interesting.
Yeah.
What? So, did he had blood footprints where? In the apartment building?
No, at the very end, when he was running down the hallway of the asylum, he had blood on his shoes, a little bit on his pant leg, I think. So maybe he stomped on her to death or something like that. But he was very relatively clean for the most part. I was like, that's really strange.
Yep. It leads you to believe he walked through a pool of her blood, was sort of my takeaway, that after he killed her, he'd sort of walk through her blood on the way out and was dragging it on his feet.
But he didn't have any, like, what did he do? I mean, how do you kill someone enough for them to bleed on the floor, step on their blood, walk out, but not have blood anywhere else but your shoes?
On your white
on your white clothes, exactly.
No, it's a reasonable question for sure.
The thing that I took, although I don't want to, the thing that I took from that is that remember earlier in the when he was talking to the first social worker, and he told her, like, you don't listen to what I say.
Yep.
Like, that was a very powerful line. Like, you never hear what I say. Like, you just ask the same question. Basically, that's one of the indictments on the system in terms of, the system not caring for people. Government services not, actually caring for people. Even when there's someone who's paid to do it, like a social worker, she's not actually, like, putting her all into it and paying attention. At the end, if the woman who was interviewing him had actually been paying attention to everything he'd been saying, she would have known the joke. She would have known that once he said, oh, I was just thinking of a joke, she would have known that for him, the punchline of his jokes are murderer's carnage. So that was something that kind of struck me, like social worker, like, aren't you, or psychiatrist, aren't you paying attention to this guy?
Literally your job to trying to
exactly.
figure out what makes him tick.
Yeah, all of us knew. We had been watching the movie and paying attention. So once he said, oh, it's a joke, I don't think you'll get it, we all knew he was going to kill her because we've been paying attention, to the film. And she was like, oh, yeah, oh, what's going on? Interesting. Tell me. But anyway, moving on. So this has been a very fruitful discussion, guys. I really enjoyed your takes. Paul, I enjoyed your nuanced and slightly different take to ours. Mike, I thought you really brought up some interesting things that I'm going to question in my second review. Fab,
your second review?
No, in my second viewing.
Second viewing.
Oh, I was like, you mean the fifth?
My second viewing of the film. And Fab, I think you brought some real nuance to the discussion. So before we head out, I would like you guys to just give us a very short sort of synopsis or summary of how you took the film, or a little blurb. Mike, could we start with you?
Okay, well, I'll just tell you this. It's an unsettling character study, a look into the mind of an outcast who is becoming who he always was.
Okay, all right. That's nice. I like that. Fab, what about you?
You guys might think I'm crazy and one of the incel.
Oh my God!
I disagree with all Paul said at the very beginning. This was one of the most feel-good movies I've watched in a long
time. Someone's been excited.
Like I walked out the theater with my spirits up. I felt great because I had just watched an amazing piece of art. I didn't feel unsettled at all. Like this was it was a breath of fresh air. Let me put it that way. Joker was a breath of fresh air.
All right. Paul, what about you? What's your blurb?
All right. Well, I'll stick with unsettling. I'll say it was gripping. It's serious. It's visceral. It's unsettling. I would say there's no signs of hope or optimism in this film, which is the point.
No fun.
There's a little bit of fun, but in a twisted kind of way. Not a whole lot though. I'd say it's an incredible performance by Phoenix, who seemingly never leaves the screen, and I'd say it's a type of adult-oriented CBM that we want to see more of.
Yes.
But this isn't the kind of movie for everyone, but there's definitely a place for this kind of movie, and to Fab's point, it is a breath of fresh air in that sense. It's not the same generic action comedy we're also sick of.
Emmerich's daughter does not approve.
No, she probably won't like it. At least not till she's a few years older.
She probably still won't take it.
So mine is that Joker is a masterpiece. Joaquin Phoenix gives a fire and brimstone performance. Todd Phillips directs as a prophet of doom, screaming a caution message from mountaintop. It's about class warfare. It's about diminishing social services. It's about the pervasive lack of civility and empathy in such a divisive world these days. It's also about child abuse. Joker's core message is we make the monsters that haunt us. And that brings us to the end of our spoiler discussion, Film Exiles. Just examine Joker. I'd like to thank Mike, Fab, Paul. Where can we find you guys on social media to talk about Joker?
Well, you can find me on social media, but you won't be able to talk about Joker because I have it muted. So, no, just joking. If you message me, I'm sure I'll get it. But you can find me on Millennial Mike at Velcro16. That's VELKRO16. That's Velcro spelled wrong with a K.
Fab?
Yep, you can catch me on Twitter at Freshy Rose. That's FRESHYROSAY. And I definitely want to talk about Joker, unlike Mike.
Paul, what about you?
Yeah, you can reach me at Paul at _Paul_P on Twitter. Happy to talk about it.
Thanks. You can find me on Twitter at LiveLoveLupe and send me all the Joker messages that you want to send me. I really want to talk about this film with you, and send me messages about other films. I love to talk about films in general. And I hope you guys, like this, comment on it, share it, subscribe, and please feel free to support us on Patreon and encourage us. I'd like to thank our Patreons. I'd like to thank Gandafar. That's at RG Handafar. I'd like to thank Chris Hartman at Chart6363. I'd like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Millennial, who aren't on Twitter.
Hey,
I'd
Mom.
like
Hey, Dad.
I'd like to thank Hayward, who's at H Watford. I'd like to thank Dan and Kelly, who are at the Reasons I'm Broke podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, remember to stay exiled.
Just smile.